Can everyone who has a headset on hear me? Is working fine? Yeah, perfect. All right, then we can get started.
So just a little test. Can you guys hear me? Because I can't hear the speech, so it's a bit worrying and annoying because we can't hear ourselves. Welcome to our masterclass here, together from the Deloitte and from the Scheffler team. We will guide you a little bit through our Medias journey, our kit, which we grew up together, I would say. But before we go into our content block and what we really want to do with you, we would like to introduce ourselves a bit, starting with Oliver.
Hi everyone, my name is Oliver. I'm heading the Medias team at Schaeffler Industrial Division. I'm at Scheffler since more than 15 years. I have an IT background. I did some startup stuff in my early years, and yes, not anymore. And after, let's say, the diploma with Scheffler, I started in the exchange agent in Scheffler on corporate level. Then I had some, let's say, steps in sales, supply chain management. At the end, finally, I found my profession, which is I was able to start the Medias journey together with Stefan from Scheffler and also with the colleagues from Deloitte since 2016.
Yeah, I'm Stefan Klotzbuecher. I'm head of the digital platform and PIM system at Schaeffler Industrial. I'm an engineer by training, and at some point I developed the passion for user experience, great designs, and general optimizing stuff. And so I'm in the middle of this digital transformation project at Scheffler. Before that, I spent many years abroad in Asia, and I had various positions from project management to lean management, business development, sales, and product management, all pieces of a puzzle that finally led to the position I'm in today.
Yeah, my name is Hagemann. I'm heading the e-commerce group of Deloitte Digital, which means basically we're building shops. And that's what we're doing here since a couple of years now with the Scheffler guys. My background is also engineering, but I'm a software developer by heart. And that's how I came into building shops then in the end, together with Stefan.
Yeah, hi. My name is Stefan. I started my career 15 years ago. Had the honor to work with a lot of talented and interesting people and clients. I started as a business analyst, then became a Scrum Master for user experience teams and also delivery teams. And yeah, in the end, after some years, then turned into project management and now program management. And yeah, I think we are all really happy to see you here. Let's have a bit of entertainment after the lunch for you.
Yeah, we have the difficult situation after the lunch break. So, of course, you have to be patient with us. This is the advertisement block. So we will make it short. So what are we doing here at Deloitte? And I guess you can imagine that there will be one of Scheffler, which is more interesting to you because I guess not everybody knows what these guys are doing. So we are obviously a creative digital consultancy. We build a lot of stuff and we do a lot of strategy work. Here in the context of this masterclass, what is important, we're doing shop development, obviously. We're doing CMS and user experience development. And that's exactly where we started this journey here together as a team comprised of a lot of what we call talent groups, which is divisions from us. So it's a mixed team which we brought on to the start here back in the days in 2006. And that's where our journey started. And you will learn now a bit of what we had to learn in the beginning.
Yeah, let's start with that question. Who is Scheffler? So if you Google this, as some of you may have, you will learn that we are an automotive supplier. That's true, but we are actually more. So we are a global operating family-owned business. And actually, we have 3 divisions. Automotive tech, automotive aftermarket, and most important for today, our industrial division. And that's what it's all about. Now you may ask, okay, and what is the industrial division doing? So in short, we are in the bearing business. We manufacture machine components. But we think, and luckily, it is a very special component. Because actually, although it's mostly hidden, it's under the hood, so to speak, it's pretty much everywhere. Yeah? It starts with maybe a tiny little thing, a bearing that you have encountered when you go to the dentist. So in dentist rules, it's a not so nice application, but it needs to be done, so it's there. And it goes up to really large size bearings that are used in wind turbines. And they are so big, they probably wouldn't even fit on this stage. And we manage also to produce everything in between. So finally, it's like this. Everything that moves or turns, there's probably a product of us at the work. Yeah? And it also makes it very interesting. As I mentioned, we deliver in all possible industries, from wind to rail to aerospace, even the space shuttle at one point, as it was still flying. Yeah? So we sell to those OEMs directly, and also we have a huge partner network worldwide where we sell indirectly. Yeah? So let's dive into some figures. Yeah? So out of that group turnover, our industrial division is delivering around about 30%, yeah? Which is more than 4 billion. And out of those 4 billion, more than 25% already is delivered by our Medias platform, which we are talking about today. Yeah? So we are a €1 billion shop. Yeah? And we have a lot of traffic. It's established by now. Yeah, we have more than 40,000 cat downloads. We have...
Stefan, stop with the numbers. Talk about Medias now.
Yeah, okay, I'm getting there, yeah. But okay, we said, okay, let's do it a little bit different. Let's not bore you too much with numbers. But anyways, I'm an engineer, you know, I gotta do this. No, let's move on, you're right. So we said we want to tell this story a little bit differently today, yeah? Because together with my fellow colleagues here, we want to take you on a journey, yeah? We want to rewind a little bit and remember and take you onto this journey, how this platform was built. We want to take you through the lowlights and the highlights, what brought us finally here. Yeah? So that's the idea. And as it was mentioned before, now after those years, it feels like kind of it's our baby. Yeah? This platform has become our baby for us and for the team. This is really it. So let's look at the family album of Medias, how it all started. Yeah? It started in 2017 with a baby wish. But that wish was not easily granted, yeah, I can say that. So let's look how the Scheffler world was actually looking like in 2017. So the company was going through a major restructuring. All the projects were under challenge, under scrutiny. And there was this update of the electronic catalog Medias. Yeah? And you have to see that our company at that time thought online is optional. Yeah? Because the truth was here in the print catalog. Yeah? You have everything here. Yeah? You can choose your bearing, you can calculate it, you can learn how it's operated, you even can customize it. So engineers, they grew up with this thing, and yes, they love to put those little stickies in. Yeah? So that was the truth. So somebody said, do we really need this? Can somebody from sales or product management go and have a look? So that's how we started this endeavor. So we went to the team and said, okay, guys, what's your scope? What do you want to do? And he said, you know, the system is end of life, the servers are unstable, we want to give it a little bit facelift and throw in some demands that have been long waiting. We're like, okay, sounds reasonable. Did you talk to the customer about this? You know, we talked to the guys in our technical office, and they are in touch with the customer, so we're pretty sure we got it. Like, okay, but did you actually talk to a customer? Stefan, it's not that easy, because we have processes and procedures. Sales doesn't let any IT guy just walk up to the customer and let them ask questions. So we have to go up the command chain and get some release. It will take weeks. And we said, we have to tackle this differently. So we did what we then called guerrilla interviews. Yeah? So we rounded up a few guys, called some engineers and say, hey, we need to bypass this and take some interviews. So we talked to the customers, and it was amazing. First of all, they were happy. They said, it's great that somebody comes and talks to us. Yeah? And then we found out it's not about updating an electronic catalog. That's not what they want. I mean, it's old news for you, but at that time, in a B2B environment, we said, hey, turns out purchasers and engineers, they want to have a B2C-like experience. They want to self-consult. Imagine that. Nobody comes and tells you what you need. I can do this on my own. Yeah? Purchasers want convenience. self-consult. And that's where we formed more this vision and said, hey, we want to deliver a holistic platform. It's digital sales, a holistic approach. And it should be as easy as search, select, shop, and track, right? It's a one-stop shop idea. And finally, if anybody wants to know about bearings, he just goes to the green website. So that was our vision. And we got it pretty shaped out with workshops, design thinking, shaping personas and everything. And we were checking it with experts, with internal stakeholders. And there, for example, was a workshop. After 1.5 days, yeah, we were scribbling architectures and stuff and everything. And then we were wrapping it up and we said, yes, it's like this. And then suddenly a senior sales guy says, guys, it's too complicated. I have a vision for you. So he was holding up his hand and saying, I envision a USB stick or a dongle that we hand out to our customers, they plug it into their computer, and then they have everything. All the knowledge, and they can just simply order. I was like, wow, what just happened? And of course, there's somebody in the room who says, yes, sir, exactly, that's what we need. And I'm like, oh my God, what happened? And actually, we are looking back and say, our lessons learned was we miscommunicated. Because we created this bubble, and it's easy in a tech and IT environment to, to decouple from the organization when we were not able to pull the people with us. And that became very obvious with the senior guy. So we were not able to communicate in a way that we got his buy-in. So we changed our narrative. Yeah? We said, okay, we have to do it differently. So let's talk to those people and imagine this. Hey, we will create this awesome platform. We put it into the hand of a sales guy. He will go to the customer, and then within 10 minutes, he will consult and make a deal. Ah, that sounds nice. So then we got suddenly the buy-in of the management. Yeah? And that was a great moment because, tick, for our project, we said management is in. Then we thought, okay, what's next? Let's go to IT. Now that we have the management buy-in, that should be easy. So we went to IT, said, hey, look, we have all these personas, use cases, stories, all the shebang. And they said, hey, wait. What we now need is a requirement specification. It's typically 400 to 500 pages. You write it, you submit it, we'll review it, we'll get back to you, and then we'll find a solution provider. And we were like, that doesn't sound right. We would like to do it a little bit more agile. And then the IT guy is like, bah, agile. Tried this a few years ago. Doesn't work. You will fail too. So spoiler alert, that guy was not on the project team later on. We went searching and found within IT some more progressive elements and found our IT manager. So IT was on board, tick. So yeah, I can say we created a fertile environment for our baby wish. Internally, we also got the management, top management funding. And now it was searching on somebody to help us deliver the baby. So we went for a tender, and I guess it's not a secret that Deloitte made the race, right? But I think one aspect that is maybe not known, but was very important for us, was that we said, okay, for Scheffler, this is really a new thing to tackle, a lot of unknowns and a big endeavor. It's probably taking years to come to a point we envisioned. And they came in and they had a team lined up and all with great CVs. But we said, we want to talk to the people. Because for us, it was important to say, hey, the chemistry has to be right. We know that it's going to be a tough project with ups and downs. And we need to make sure that our team, and we know that Scheffler is not always easy to deal with, yeah? But he said, okay, we need to make sure that the teams that we form, that they can work with each other. And actually, Deloitte was so flexible that we said, okay, with some of those persons, we are not sure. Can you change your lineup? Yeah, and let us talk to those guys. And they actually made it so that I could say we started with a dream team, and then it felt right, and then we said, okay, right, let's do this.
Yeah, I can remember the pitch presentation which we had with this fancy slide about the bearings, this very sophisticated scientific slide, which nobody understood, us including, because unfortunately we made it. So one thing was, of course, understanding this very complex product portfolio and without having any knowledge about bearings. But the real deal was then in the end that we needed to gain trust, because we were, of course, someone who was able to build shops. but we didn't have any clue about bearings, and of course not about Scheffler as an organization. So how do they tick? What are they all about? How far are they in their thinking? Because the guys which we were talking to, obviously they were in favor of Agile and they wanted to do it like that, but of course the rest of the organization, the rest of the 15,000 people, there might not be that case. And we also had some things to tackle when we started there, and this was one of the discussion elements which we had in the beginning. We said we have to do it in English, right? Because our developers are English speaking, most of our senior staff is also English speaking. We are an international company, and they said, oh, this will be a big issue because, well, all of our sales guys, they are just able to communicate in German, and then we need a translation. And we said, no, translation is not a good idea. There's so much lying then on the falling through the cracks. With respect to real requirements, we can't do this. We have to document also everything in English, because when we get bigger, which might be the case, and when we have to scale up, then it gets really crazy with all this German documentation which you then have, which you then can more or less throw away. So there was a lot of gaps to bridge, and we made then an experiment, and we onboarded one of our Indian guys, just English speaking. And now we're doing presentations in English together, so we made it, I would say. And he was then becoming later on the lead business analyst of the whole project, being well respected in the whole organization, really capable of understanding bearing business, which he never had a clue before, which was one of the things. So, but there was something else to tackle, and which we touched a bit. So this idea, this theoretical idea of agile implementation, how do you do a software project? And they already had done some stuff with other agencies like design thinking, but it's different if you do it practically or if you read it in a textbook. And we started in an inception or discovery phase, however you want to call it. This was nice and easy. But then, of course, at some point in time, it has to change into a more sophisticated mode. And we had to convince everybody how it really works, because it's not like in the textbook. It's not like it's written down there. This is all the ideal world, which never happens. In order to build trust, what we did then is we said, okay, normally we wouldn't do it like that, but for building this trust, we have to be on site with these guys. And at this point in time, we were all with the Z. So it was a very formal way of communicating. It was Herr Thiele and Herr Klotzbuecher, and not Stefan and Oliver. We changed that a year later. So what we said, in order to gain this trust, in order to understand how this company is ticking, and we went to the lovely city of Schweinfurt, where also the factory is. So you can see the factory there, you can see how the things are built. And this is completely different. And we went there 3 days a week for almost a year, just to get in touch to each other, just to know about the company and what it's all about. And this was then our Raum Sonne. So this room, although it had this fancy name of Raum Sonne, had one thing which was not there: sunlight. It was dark, it was in the corner, it was an ex-training room, I guess, right? And we ended up there, sitting on tables.
Yeah, because this was also differently declared. You know, when we got the funding for this project, they told us, oh, now this is our top project. And Stefan, we will give you a room on the top management floor so that you have closed pathways, because you need to align with the key account managers and everything. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. We are really in it now. And then 1 week later, I'm calling and say, where's our room? And then, about that, you know, we had to give it to a more important guy who just showed up. But there's this training room close to the basement. Yeah, that would be suitable. And that's where we actually had to bring those guys in. But it had a little bit of a garage and a startup feeling. So I kind of like it. So.
Yeah, that's true. Let me also add a bit more from a team perspective, because for some of you working in the delivery teams or in the UX UI teams, it might be also interesting how they felt this. So you've seen the print catalog, and now imagine you have like 4 to 6 weeks to learn what is in there. And this is, by the way, one product line. So there are like, I don't know, 20, 30, whatever. So a lot more about this. So we had some lessons online before we entered Raum Sonne, actually, but they were in German. So it was really hard for us to get into the details with designations, taxonomies, and all these words, and what the products bring with it. So that was a challenge in the first weeks, and also as a learning, like, get your products transferred to the ones who should work with it and then make something out of it. So the UX UI team had to basically turn this print catalog into an online version and sell it in addition. It was an e-commerce, it's an e-commerce platform, so you have to sell what's there. And that took quite some review rounds, a lot of openness to do something different, because coming from a print corporate identity, of course there was an online content area already, but not commerce focused. Many people had to be very open to think differently, and that took a lot of time to convince them. So we had to do many baby steps in the beginning, and talking about baby steps, I think it's the right point to flip the page.
All right, so then we were in 2018, and 2018 was under the roof, or main headline, prepare and develop under the surface, under the radar, not to wake up the competitors, especially not the main one, and to be quick and as soon as possible with the deployment. And during that time, I mean, we were doing it in an agile way, what was really quite new to all of us in Scheffler world, let's say, definitely. With the project, we were, I think, let's say, getting on track agile quite quickly, but on the other side with Scheffler, connecting, let's say, in the corporate was a different thing, so it was quite challenging. Also, I must say, back in the days, 2018, let's say, the confidence level from our top management was not that high, which means they were giving us money, they were, let's say, of course, funding it, but after 2, maximum 3 months, they were saying immediately, okay, they want to see a demo. They want to see a robust MVP. They want to see now how the whole system looks like. And we were saying, oh, two months after the actual start of that project, that is a very quick one. We need to think about something. So what we were doing is we were creating a kind of a fancy mock-up, really something very nice and shiny, very beautiful, completely unuseful. And we were presenting it to the top management. And they were buying it. They were saying, oh, it's great. Oh, it's such a fantastic tool. You have our support. And then we were actually heading over and, let's say, doing our actual development. And we're also able to deploy first release back in April 2018. And for, let's say, our first launch in this very international business, we selected UK. We thought UK is really a good place to be because it is still in Europe, but far away from our home market. And it's an easy catch, but we were totally wrong. In UK, actually, they were not waiting for us. They didn't like us. They just said, okay, come over. If the top manager says it, then we need to handle it somehow. But what they did was they were assigning us D customers. Actually, usually in the Scheffler world, there exists A customers, very big ones, B and C customers. I have never heard about D customers. That was a bunch of customers they allocated to us. And then we started the whole thing. And actually, of course, none of those customers were buying anything on Medias. The only mistake they did was there was just this one very little customer they underestimated. And this customer somehow started to buy like hell. And nobody really could explain it. It was fantastic for us. I mean, it was really a success. We needed that success dramatically. And it came into, and then, after a while, actually, we had some working ground. But still, really, the issue was, let's say, UK was not, let's say, happy with us at all. They had a legacy e-commerce system. Also, their management, the country manager said, okay, actually, I don't want you, so you do not need to be with us. Maybe you find another place, but not UK. And also what we really totally underestimated was, let's say, pricing and politics. In such a big company, you have a lot of networks. You have, let's say, a lot of powerhouses. And we totally underestimated that, let's say, that factor. And with that, you could say change management is something very important. And we totally forgot it at the beginning. And that is what really one lesson learned. Yeah, and then after a while, we said, okay, now what's going on? The European hangover blues started. None of the other European country management invited us. They didn't like us. They said, okay, we still have the old system, and we know and we heard something about UK, so you do not need to come over to us. But we still had at that time the top management buy-in out of our, let's say, first presentation. And that was very important, because with that, we were able to change the whole game. And that means when you think a little bit about introducing, let's say, digital sales, and with that transforming an existing business, a conservative business, even a business in the steel manufacturing industry, when you're transforming that from manual to digital sales, that is almost impossible, huh? At least at the beginning, because you have a lot of stuff you need to consider and a lot of, let's say, political powerhouses. And the second thing then was, okay, we said, so let's take it on, but let's make it now different. Out of the lessons learned from UK, we said, okay, we need to change something, we need to adapt to that. And what we did was basically we were creating a complete new concept of rolling it out, which meant we were acquiring a very famous guy for field sales training. And we were conducting a, let's say, a lessons, a training concept where we basically created a hybrid between a, let's say, a old classic field sales training and the introduction of a new e-commerce tool. And with that guy and his colleagues, we were now selling it out to Europe. We were starting in Italy, in Spain, in Sweden, in Switzerland, and so on and so on. And then actually also the field sales guys, they were buying it first time. Huh? And Stefan, can you remember first time when, let's say, the old-fashioned field sales guy were greeting us? It was always like that. Huh? They didn't want us. But with that kind of training, we said, okay, here is something valuable for you. We give you really an excellent field sales training, but we also give you now a new tool at hand. And the bottom line was to understand that, let's say, the new tool is not an enemy of them. It is just supporting their way of doing business, which means the account owners are still responsible for sales. They are still responsible for the whole account itself. And actually, it makes no difference for them whether they get now the sales via manual, traditional sales, or via the digital channel. And that was the first, I would say, starting point for those guys to say, okay, yeah, maybe we cannot really avoid it, but maybe it's not that bad. But that was, let's say, I would say, really the turning point for us at the beginning. But still, we had a lot of problems to solve. But yeah, Stefan, how have you perceived the situation at that time?
Yeah, I think we now got the sales guys on our side, but we still had to tackle the engineers, because you can imagine German engineers, because that was like centrally focused, they have an 120% approach and want to have it really accurate. And also to bring it again down on a feature level to make it more tangible. So we had a search on the page, but there was already from the previous system a search that was there for like 12, 15 years, optimized, very focused. And we did the 80-20 approach. So the first tests on this search was not really successful. I think it even went that far that people wanted to stop the first rollout and then these kind of things, because we had to fine-tune search and show the product in the right order and these kind of things. It's a very easy thing for you as a user, but for those of you who have ever configured a search engine, especially in 2018, that was really a challenge. So expectation management in that direction, that was something we had to really learn the hard way right before a go live. From a product perspective, also I think a very important point, you have to bring all these thousands of products online that are rather complex, a lot of data, a lot of stuff that is really important to the engineers, up to each comma and each number and these kind of things, because otherwise your calculations will fail. And the product data was not ready. So I still remember when we had the first interview with the IT lead in, I think it was September or August 2017, he literally asked me, like, what is the focus on making something an e-commerce success and what is so important for us as a first step? And I said, yeah, you have to get your product data right, and actually already now you're too late because you need the pictures, the data, everything has to be there. Yeah, and it proved in April 2018 that it was really too late. So we started in a very very lean way on the product data area. Yeah. All right, let's have a look into the next year.
So yeah, you know, or you heard, we had some initial excitement and successes, but at the same time it felt like kind of a dip because Europe was not really embracing our baby, our platform, as we pictured it. You know? But we had a strict project plan, so we said, hey, let's move on and also roll out to Asia Pacific and China. And we thought, yeah, should be a piece of cake, right? You now have a platform, so modify it a little bit to the local conditions and then scale it into the region. So we nominated our project teams locally, our satellites, and we went over to make a fit gap analysis. So we had a workshop, and then they said, look, Stefan, it's not going to work here. And I'm like, come on, yeah? This is the home turf of Alibaba, WeChat, Coupang, Shopee. You tell me online is not working around here, online platform? And they said, we want to make it work, but you need this, and this to make it work. And we got suspicious. We said, okay, are they building a wall of requirements just to keep us away? You know, as we had seen in Europe a little bit. And we said, okay, make us understand, yeah? What is your customer doing? What features do you really want? And help us understand your business processes, yeah? Because they said also that may be an issue. And yeah, we did some good old process engineering and checking and said, okay, it's different than Europe, yeah? Although we are a global company, there's local specifics definitely of doing business, but also the processes people do. A lot of manual processes because our ERP backbone was not really one-to-one. Yeah? And then he said, okay, let's find out what can make the difference. And we asked the local guys to prioritize. And they said, okay, with these features, we can make it work. And we said, okay, that's a lot of stuff that was not planned, not budgeted. But we said, okay, let's make a deal. Let's do it differently, not fall into the Europe trap. We do those features. And this unlocks and unblocks certain customers. And then right away you onboard them and we want to see them making sales. And they said, Stefan, okay, let's have a deal. And now in retrospect, this is kind of like a case study you can print out. So you can really see, okay, development, release, customer onboarded, revenue kicking in, next batch, and so on. So it was really a success story we created in that year. And then we thought, okay, that's nice, how to utilize this. So we were doing one-to-ones and sure fixes with our sales areas, yeah, with the Netherlands, with Europe West, and also then with Asia. We said, hey, let's take those target settings and KPI boards and make it a worldwide weekly report. Yeah, because what happened, we put in, okay, new customers onboarded per region, per country, order intake per region, per country. Because deep down, it turns out, those sales guys are highly competitive. So what happened when the figures flocked in from Asia Pacific and China, the Europeans were saying, that's not good, you know. We're looking bad in the charts. So they started opening up and say, hey, come on, guys, give me that feature and then I will really bring you customers, and not the ones this time. And it also worked out, yeah. So we were managing and playing a little bit with the regions, but it turned out to be really working.
Yeah. In addition to that interesting effect, we also noticed something else from requirements perspective. So we started in Europe, as already explained, and I'm the bring it down to the feature level guy. So let's bring it down to a feature again. We had a feature that's called bulk upload. You have an Excel sheet, you put in 50 lines of products, you load it, and then it's in the cart and you can buy it. For the European guys, it was not exciting at all. It was like, yeah, we maybe need it, but yeah. So we skipped kind of fine-tuning that. But when we went to Asia Pacific, out of a sudden, they asked, okay, it's too slow and not enough lines. We need like thousands of products we want to order with one go. And it has to be really performant in the checkout, in the cart. We need all the data. And so we had a rather short time frame where we needed to adapt to fit to the market, which is a really interesting thing. We are centrally steering it from Germany and have to approach all the different markets and regions to understand their needs actually early enough. So luckily we are in an agile environment. I mean, we were down to like 2 to 3 month release cycles. Now we are to monthly, so it's also turning a bit. But at that time, 3 months was like the release cycle. So we had to go into another iteration, change something, and then fit to the market as it needs. And over time, then Europe also accepted this feature very well, and now it's used widely, and we could really fine-tune it. So it's an interesting effect to see kind of things that you don't thought about before in a new region become something that's really state-of-the-art right now. Yeah. Okay, so it was very important to be iterative, and I think that's the ideal handover.
Yeah, so what happened then on the software development side in 2018 and 2019? So we became a real project, to be honest. So we left this stage of discovery phase, and we can talk about the UX UI stuff for hours, because the button left and button right. Yeah, there was no time pressure. Yeah, we could think about it again. And now this kind of agile release train started, and with the success of the UK with this one single customer, and then the follow-on success with this tiny little competitive approach, which Stefan mentioned, we were really in the game. So we had a lot of features, we had a lot of feature requests, we did a lot of stuff. We had to provide releases, we had to provide bug fixes for the releases which we had, which is a complete different area of software development you're currently in, and everybody had to learn it, of course. Yeah? So at the beginning, when we just started this, there was an empty backlog, of course. There's always an empty backlog until you mention, okay, there's now 10 people, 10 developers waiting for you. And if you do not fill that, they will surf in the internet at your cost. Yeah? At this point in time, then everybody understands that they have to fill the backlog, and that there is something to do now. And then you get slowly into this mood of constant delivery, constant integration, constant development, which is not the case normally. And at the same point in time, we had to face something which is in traditional development not there, because we used the product. So we didn't build the shop homegrown. We used SAP Hybris back in the days, which is now SAP Commerce. So there's something in there. There is something which you have to take a look at. There's something pre-built. There's something which you can leverage. There are specific things which you can simply use. That's the reason why you buy a product and why you do not build it on your own, because it's very time-consuming. But of course, if you have requirements which do not fit to that, or if you have product owners which say, okay, I want to have this exactly like I specified it now, and then you build around the product, you can increase the effort tremendously. And we had then to bridge this gap of, okay, this is your wish and this is what is in the product. Maybe we find a compromise, or let's do it a little bit like this or a little bit like that. And then we can make it much less effort than we would normally do it. So this was this kind of scaling the whole project, and we also had to scale the team, of course, because it was much more demand than before. And before that, as I mentioned in the 2017 slide, we were this small team. Now we are all at the do after a very long night in 2018, which ended at 4 o'clock or something like that. Yeah, so then we were all perdu, as we say in German. And this was really, it was implicitly a one-team approach. So this was a team, this was our baby. Obviously, we developed it together. There was no Scheffler or Deloitte at the ground. We were still in Raumsonne in the startup phase, but now it became bigger and bigger. We split up the team. We had a cell division there. It became bigger on our view or on our side, and it became bigger at the Scheffler side. And this was the point in time where we, for the first time, created this one-team concept. So we had to really formulate it. We had to spell it out, that we took everybody at the hand and said, okay, this is not a supplier relationship. We don't want to be, these are the guys who tell us what to do and these guys do it. We do it together. It's together our babies. We are the parents. And we formulated this concept really explicitly to all the new team members. And as of today, it still is like that.
Absolutely. Yes, thanks, Tim. So now heading over to 2020, I would say the main headline for 2020 was definitely the go public, because until 2020, the whole e-commerce side, the whole site as itself was completely invisible, which means it was an exclusively restricted area for direct customers. And actually, Scheffler was nominating customers to be able to let's say, connect to this site or e-commerce platform, but you couldn't see it outside. And that we changed now in 2020. It was a migration of an existing legacy system, the old, so to say, product portfolio system. And yeah, it was basically really lifting up the curtain, showing it to the competitors, showing it to the world. So it was really, I would say, a change, a big change, or With that, actually, we were having now different obstacles or issues to solve. First issue was, okay, what name do we want to give that child? Because until then, it was just having two names. One was the digital customer platform. That was a purely internal name. I think, okay, not the worst one, but it really hadn't a lot of, let's say, outside effect. Huh? And the second name was e-commerce industrial. That was the name the existing customers who were already nominated and onboarded on that portal were able to log in, e-commerce industrial. We were thinking about it, maybe not the worst thing, but then there was one call with our US colleagues. They were not in that game yet. They were telling us, look, if you want to introduce it, you cannot name it e-commerce because we have invented e-commerce. That was really quite, I would say, a brutal statement. So we said, okay, maybe not e-commerce. And then we decided to go with the already existing brand, which was Medias. Medias was already known out of, let's say, the legacy system, and we just said, okay, let's resample it, let's reuse it, let's just make it our own. And I think it was good for two reasons, because first reason was there were a lot of customers, so a lot of, let's say, our users already aware of this name. And secondly, also, it was a little bit an interesting thing, just from a psychological point of view, when you name something now your own, which is so far a very positive brand inside the company. Also, the other guys in the company, they are thinking about, okay, what is it now? Is it digital custom or is it maybe the Medias? So they hesitate a little bit in doing their politics. And that was somehow a good thing for us. The next step was, of course, inventing, let's say, an international fork page. And doing all of these things, we still had issues, like we still had politics, and we still had, let's say now, new issues. We needed to incorporate now the old Medias features into the new Medias. And it was a kind of a hybrid migration. So firstly, the new Medias system really became the, let's say, the new dominant platform, but still the old system were delivering all maybe some of the old features into the new system. So there was a little bit the hybrid. And then we said, okay, so now we have changed the thing. Now everything actually changes, because now with this awareness, you get a lot of users on the site. You are now public. Now the competitors see you, but also now a lot of users see you. And now we had the issue, okay, how to deal with all the users, because all the users, or a lot of those users, are already, let's say, customers of our retailer network. So we have a very strong international authorized sales partner network, and we cannot, let's say, lose them. And we do not want to, let's say, have a competition with them. But now all of their customers were on Medias. So how to manage it? And then we said, okay, yeah, what does an engineer do if he does not know really the answer? He's building up a pyramid. So maybe the solution is a pyramid, and it resulted then really in a so-called Medias pyramid in 3 layers approach, which means first layer is the public layer. That is the layer where all the users are going onto. That's a public, let's say, feed, the public side of the platform. And the second layer was then the public registration area where users could register, and with that we would get now information about the leads. And the third one, of course, is the existing customer platform, let's say the e-commerce, what we have established back in since 2018. And the interesting thing then was, okay, what do we do now with these users? And the solution was actually quite easy. We said, okay, first thing, we need to create a kind of a forwarding system to not to lose those customers to our sales partners. That was the so-called sales partner finder. And the second one was, we also created a kind of a unique thing. It was the request offer feature. Request offer feature means as soon as a user now has registered himself to become a Medias Plus user, he would be able to create wish lists with, let's say, different products. And at the end, he can say, okay, I take this wish list and I just forward it to those selected sales partners and I request offers from them. And that was then for us somehow, I would say, the breakthrough in dealing with those, let's say, users' leads on that platform.
Yeah, so now we are public with the platform, and there is one aspect that also might be forgotten, that is like the years before, you as a team member, it was really hard to explain what you're doing. So we call Scheffler, customers like Scheffler, we call them the hidden champions because they are really big and they are involved in a lot of stuff, but nobody really knows the name for actually what's going on. So if you tell at home, I'm developing an e-commerce shop for Scheffler, then yeah, your mother or grandmother would probably say, okay, that's really nice, I have no clue what you're talking about. And you cannot even show it because it's behind the registration, you have to be a customer, so, but now we're public. And that was quite an impact on the team, because they could really literally just give the link and show what's going on. So that, yeah, we should not kind of forget that as well, because that was quite important. And talking about the team, Tim already mentioned that we were considering us as one team, but of course there is a way to get there. And also there we have differences between Deloitte and the Scheffler world. So in Deloitte it was already clear, if you have team events, you lose a bit of productivity, you go out, maybe the next day will be a bit later and all these things, you don't do the most complex workshops, etc. Because afterwards, after some months, you will gain speed and performance because you work closer together. And for the Scheffler world, a bit more traditional, that had to be connected with the workshop and the reason for doing stuff and basically not losing too much, which is understandable. So together we now kind of build a way that our team events have a mixture of both. And we grow really, really close together. And that's also important for many of you who are involved in these kind of things. It's easier if you're connected, then you have less stress in a lot of situations. Yeah, but now we are finally public, and yeah, old Medias is kind of gone. Let's see.
Yeah, but it wasn't really gone because they definitely, and that what I would like to emphasize here is Oliver. He equalized this. We took over the old Medias, and these guys then were gone. It wasn't that easy, to be honest. Yeah, so they. It was someone else's baby since roughly 20 years, and they had built this system, and of course they were eager to keep it, and they didn't want to let it go. And they didn't want to cooperate, to be honest. We knew these guys, of course, for the last 5 years, because they always thought about, okay, they already smelt it, yeah, that at some point in time there would be a decision left or right, and that it might be the case that they would be on the wrong side of the decision, as they were then in the end. So their first, in the first talks they said, okay, you have to copy all the features which we have, and then it was really massive. Yeah, so we would have spent a year or two just implementing the features of the system, because the system which they have built there, it was also a calculation system. It was not only a system where you could purchase or take a look at the products, but also use the products in specific engineering areas and then calculate the bearings you need and then directly jump into the product catalog with the pre-selected bearing. And we had to redo this all. And of course, that's not that easy because it's all engineering calculation. And we had to build it all into our shop now, which it was not built for. So we did all of that. But of course, we did it with an 80-20 approach. And we said, okay, how many people are actually using this? So, and which one of they were called wizards. Which of these wizards were actually used? We will build the ones which are really used. And by that, we really covered that. It was really resistance to change. Yeah? So in the end, this was the same guy who was responsible for the product catalog data before, and the pictures, where we had a bit of an issue, because there were no pictures, because you can print one picture in the catalog, not so many pictures. But now we needed for every product one picture, as you can imagine. So it was a bit of a resistance to change at that point in time. We were trying. At the same point in time, of course, it became more and more complex. As you can imagine, it started as a traditional kind of e-commerce platform selling products which are already there. Now it became also a calculation tool. It became a content tool, because when you would look at into the catalog, it's also used as a reference guide, because a lot of calculation methodology, so as a textbook, as an engineering textbook, is also in there. And if we get rid of it, if we want to get rid of it, we have to copy all of that also into the platform. It became more and more an experience platform over the time. And I guess the year after that, it really took off a bit.
Yeah. So it's 2021, the year of the configurator. It was long on our wish list, but we had to look at our capabilities. So if you remember, I was telling you about everything that turns, right? These are the bearings. But we also have a big portfolio of linear motion. So linear motion, that is stuff that you may see in robotics, in industrial machineries, 3D printers and stuff. Yeah? So our company was working and saying, hey, we will create a special data model for this one. Because other than that, that can be handled with a lot of standards and variants. Linear products, they're always customized. It's always a little bit different. Here a cut, a little bit shorter, a little bit of angle there. So we said, okay, there's in our ERP system, SAP, they developed a data model that can actually handle this. And they also put up a configurator for our sales guys so that the salespeople, could go in and configure. So classically how it would be, again, the sales guy goes to the customer, they sit together, they sketch and stuff. He comes home or to the office and starts configuring. But let's just say this SAP configurator didn't win a UX UI prize, right? It was a little bit tedious to handle. So we said maybe something can be done about this. And of course, some of our competitors had some basic configurators. So we said, okay, the time is right. We have the data model. There's a pressure from the outside. And we can do better because, hey, we have selection assistance. You know, we have brought the platform to a certain level, so we're confident to tackle it. So let's do it. So we are forming the team with these guys, and this is when trouble starts. Yeah? Because they're really, we hit German over-engineering. Yeah? It's where 120% is just good enough. You know, because they said every little edge case, no, this needs to be in the configurator. And we said, no. It must be easy. You know, you need the entry point. You choose, and we guide the customer in a few clicks. But yeah, so maximum 5 choices in the beginning on the front page. Like, no. There are 15 basic options, and they all need to go in there. Yeah? And it's just like, we said, okay, this one, just take this one. There's 4 rails and stuff and the whole thing. How many customers do need this? 2 or 3 we know of. How many inquiries per year do we have? 10. How many orders do we get out of those 10 inquiries? 1 or 2. Then you don't need a configurator for this. Yeah, you can handle this regularly with our sales guys. And it's another thing, yeah, some stuff it's still okay to have a sales guys and have our engineers talk about. But let's focus on the standard. In theory, this all sounds good, but when you're in the meeting, the people have passion and say, no, it has to be like this. So we really have to come up and preach and do the 80-20 approach and try to work with those guys to come to an easy-to-use configurator. Because we said, finally, it's also about having our salespeople to use those configurators, yeah, to make their life easy. Yeah, and we came up with tricks to say, hey, let's really follow the MVP approach. Yeah, with all these discussions, we say, hey, can't we cut the story in half? We do it now because the release is coming, and we move it to the backlog, saying in the next audio, the following release. Yeah, and it's kind of a method to take the heat out of the room and get the people cool down and handle it, and it actually works. And I can tell you some of that must-haves at that very moment, they're still at the bottom of our backlog, yeah? Because after a few months nobody cared anymore, and suddenly also no customer needed it. But it's these tricks that you have to come up with and say, okay, how to de-escalate the situation to move on. And yeah. And now actually, I mean, the guys are happy, and I think it was a few months, no, last year it was actually, when the system was down, and we said, okay, there's going to be a shitstorm from the customers, but it was actually after a few minutes that the sales guys were complaining, because it turns out nobody's using that SAP configurator anymore. They all go to the nice and easy to use configurator, because it's so simple and fast. Yeah? So that's our take on that.
Yeah, so for us it was just a question because it's so special. Do you know SAP variant configuration? Anybody? Can you raise your hand? Oh, 2 of them. So you know what, or at least 2. So you know what I'm talking about. This was variant configuration. It was built for engineers and for the production. So actually it goes directly to the production to build then the linear bearing, which is then done. And this was the thing which we had to connect to an online system. So it was not really anything about it. It was an understatement that there was a UX. Yeah? So it is. There was a user. Of course, there's a user interface. Yeah? But generally speaking, it was more to really to drive the production of the bearing then in the end in the factory, and not to be a sales guide tool. They tried several times, I guess, before with other tools to have this kind of sales guidance. And for us, it was really the so-called enemy. We had a discussion before in the normal bearings, the usual rotating bearings, if we really need a configurator. Because they're configurable as well. So we have 100 parameters per bearing with more than 20, 30, 40 values. There's not that many rules which we could put into the system. So we ended up in doing our own small, tiny configurator-like product without really having a real configuration engine behind it. But with linear, it was completely different. We had to do it and we had to use it because otherwise the factory wouldn't know how to build it. So for us, it was again scaling again. Yeah, so we now had to do the traditional bearings. We were live in several countries. We got, of course, tickets when something didn't work. We got bug fixes. We got feature requests, which you can imagine, because if the system is then live, everybody has a wish. And then at the same point in time, we are building up a whole new product line, which is completely different than all the other things which we have done before. So it was not only onboarding a new product line, it was really also, from a technology perspective, connecting to a completely different enemy, which we had to do there. So this was really something which we then tackled, and it took almost a year, really, and several releases to really connect to it. But it was worth the effort, because nowadays everybody's using it and likes the more simple interface which we put on top of it, which is the thing which we typically do in e-commerce projects, because, well, everybody could order in SAP or your favorite ERP system, but nobody does. And now we're going to today.
All right, so 2022 and 2023. The platform became more and more complex. You have much more users now on the platform. You have much more sales on the platform. And with that, let's say the whole thing became really business critical. So it's not like back in the days, 2017, 18, where you're just growing something, letting something grow without any sales. Now it's really, let's say, a big thing for the company. And with that also, let's say it's more critical. And also here, let's say it's also more challenging with devs and ops, of course. And also you must see, now considering Medias with 1/4 of sales of Schaeffler Industrial Division, thousands of users on a daily basis. As a name card, you could even say, for Schaeffler Industrial, we are not, let's say, a startup anymore. We are not the rebels anymore. We are now part of the establishment, part of the government maybe even. And that is a big change of mind, I would say. It's a game changer. Because also now some other topics arise. For example, now you need to handle stuff like, you see sometimes popping up new submarines. Submarines in Schaeffler Industrial Division. We were also some kind of submarine back in 2017. But now they are popping up new things, and you need to somehow steer them, because still our claim, we want to be the one-stop shop for the industry, is still valid for us. But also there are others, young and hungry rebels. They also want to have part of the cake. And now the question is really how to handle them and how to do it right. Another thing is now you have a lot of, let's say, other digital functions, councils, programs. You need to align with them. You need to incorporate with all these, let's say, official councils within the corporate division. And that is also not so easy. And also now when you think about new features back in 2017-18 were quite simple. You just build up some stuff on the green field. But now when you're building up new stuff, you need to integrate smoothly, deeply into current processes, into a structure. You need to align with people. You need to handle much more complex requirements on the technical features. And that is also something I think we have learned. Also another thing what is also now coming more and more is, for example, that we see, let's say, more, let's say, technical demands. For example, there are now the big buzzwords like CDP, personalization, or marketing automation, and so on and so on. And we also need to keep track with them. But usually it's like that. When we talk about that in our internal company, we always hear, yeah, it sounds great, but let's talk about it later. And that is also a little bit the issue. Now we are also, let's say, challenged to keep pace with, let's say, all the technical developments, but it's not that easy. But yeah, I must also say it is still a very exciting journey, because we are also at the same time inventing stuff and deploying stuff what is quite unique on the market. For example, we have also invented an own affiliate program. Affiliate, I think, is a name all of you have heard, and all of you are might, let's say, familiar with it. But with all of those things, Scheffler has, let's say, created its own affiliate style, which means we have built up a systematic to incorporate with our sales partners and with medias, and this is affiliate. And with that, we are still able now, or we are even able to take advantage out of those thousands and thousands and thousands of users on a daily basis, those leads, and to bring them in a beneficial way over to our sales partners in order to make the business over there. And that is also, I think, a great thing, because we are the first one, and I think so far it's also a USP on the market to have such a program, let's say, at least in the, let's say, steel manufacturing industry available. Yeah, but that is somehow, I would say, the situation right now. And when you also think about, we are now part of the government, we are not anymore in Room Sonne. Huh? I mean, the Room Sonne was maybe back in the days when we were the young submarine, the rebels. But there is no Room Sonne anymore. Now it's also, let's say, a normal office area. Huh? We are not, let's say, the small or the bad guys here around the block. But with the, let's say, with now leaving the Room Sonne, also new chapter arises. And as I have said it, it's a big change now in the whole perception and in the whole game, from a startup now becoming part of the government.
Okay, yeah, let's zoom out a bit. So what we tried in the last kind of hour is, with our stories, to bring some value to you, of course, and give something to you when you leave this room that you can take away. So what we will try now is to summarize those takeaways for you, and of course then afterwards also open the discussion around that. Let me start with the first one. We talked a lot about people, and it's actually a no-brainer because people are involved, but it has so many different aspects. It could be you have to involve the people, you have to think about the right people you need in the team. It's maybe not just about the CV and the listing, it might also be about meeting them and paying attention to what they experienced in the past. It's about culture. For example, just maybe to close with one anecdote about people, the Franconian way of making compliments is basically not to complain, and bringing that to a nearshore team who's in Corona time sitting far away is really challenging, but you can do it, right? So it's not always the American way of saying that something works very well. It's there are different styles of doing it, and I can use that because we talked about it a lot. So really that's one of the main key takeaways. Pay attention to the people and whatever comes with that. It's a lot. Tackle tradition.
So, who does tackle tradition?
Tradition is actually yours.
No.
Let's tackle it.
Let's tackle it.
Let's
Yeah,
tackle
Agile,
a
as you can
tradition.
see.
Yeah, so I guess tackle tradition, or in other words, it's about managing change. Yeah. So we told you we underestimated it because, again, we made the mistake to be stuck in our vision because we thought it's a great idea. We thought everybody else is surely thinking it's a great idea. In retrospect, now we have stuff like CCT, communication, change, and training, and you have to take it really serious. Yeah, you can read it in every book, but it's totally true. Don't underestimate it, and work with it. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it takes work, it takes time. It's nothing you can jumpstart or overtake. Yeah, you have to factor it in. And you saw with our anecdotes that it can be really a showstopper and a hold-up if you don't take it seriously. And you always have to kind of tactically find the right answer to it. Yeah?
Yeah, the next thing is really what we called, or what we phrased with find your own agile. So what do we mean with that? And when we started, we thought, okay, all our projects are done in Agile. We can't do waterfall anymore because we don't believe in it. So and we were about to convey this to the whole company. Yeah, so everybody has to do Agile now, and this is really a mistake. Yeah, so what we did is here, we kept it local. We kept it in our small bubble. We interfaced very well to the outside world, to the other projects. We knew where the boundaries are. By that, we didn't have to teach everyone what we need, so they could stay in their traditional processes, but we could go on, and we were not blocked. It's of course always a kind of friction at the outside world, yeah, that you can do that. But in the end, this enabled us also to tailor the process as we needed it, and gave us some freedom and some room. Because otherwise, if we would have started a complete agile transformation, blah blah, within Scheffler, I think we still would work on that and wouldn't have a system which is live and ready. So build your bubble there, but do it in a way that you communicate about it. And with the success of the platform, hopefully it then kicks in, it will be automatically transported to the overall company. Because then they learn, hey, they don't have yearly releases. They can do it in months or even in 1 month, which is not known to them before. And then you do not have to convince them that it is written in your textbook, because then you can show it. Come on, guys, we're doing it. Yeah, so okay, you can put out requirements here, and 2 months later, which is then very late, but they're there. If you're used to 2-year cycles, it's fast. So do this and find your own way of implementing Agile into your company. And the second one is, which I would like to tackle, is the 80 is okay thingy. So we are all, and I guess you here on the OMR are all aware of this kind of way of working. Yeah? So 80% doing an MVP, lean first, let's tackle the important cases. But if you come from an engineering background in Bavaria, it's completely different. Yeah? It is completely different. These guys have been taught for the last 20 years that 120% is barely enough, that you have to do it right the first time, otherwise the bearing doesn't fit into the motor engine, and you stand in front of them and say, come on, 80% is enough, let's do it like that, let's try it out, we will do better first. And this really kicks in and triggers them in order to completely not do what you want them to do. The trigger is that we do the 80%, which we do, with 120% prescription and quality. And that's what you have to convey, that it is not, that you're not lowering quality by doing less. You just do the things you select right, but absolutely right. And that's always a misperception when you say, okay, let's do an MVP first, everybody thinks, okay, they're leaving out the complicated stuff because they're not capable of doing it, or they're doing lack of quality, may have more bugs, which is not the case, basically, or it shouldn't be the case. And that's what you have to always have in mind, especially if you're working in an engineering and industrial background, because the outside world is so completely different. Obeying that helps you to avoid a lot of friction in the end, and a lot of discussion, which then, again, goes into this tackle transition, tradition and change management, which is just a part of it.
All right, and now it's also about communicate. Communicate is a very powerful and intense tool. I think we all need to use it, maybe even much more than before. Communication is also about keep them informed, keep them involved, and keep them inspired. It also has a very strong implication to change management, because when you think about tradition and breaking up traditions, you need to, let's say, understand the people, and you need to bring them also onto the boat. And because of that, I think communication really is a very strong influencing factor. And also, when you think about what we have heard before, let's say the rollout phase, where we were starting in Europe and then, let's say, going over to Asia, to APEC. Also here, it was about communication, because we were communicating now, let's say, very transparently our, let's say, achievements. And that has become a competitive factor. And with that also we were able to break up the ice in Europe. So communication definitely is a very strong influencer.
Yep. So the final take is stay hungry and adapt. And Oliver has mentioned it. I mean, we were the young ones, the contenders, shaking and rattling the cage. And now 5 years later, we are part of the establishment, because now We have a huge platform to govern for, and the game is a little bit different. Yeah. So the processes in the beginning we were circumventing. Now we have to make sure that there's reasonable processes to deliver every day via the platform, and still be hungry to be cutting edge and do the next right move, right? And now that a lot of stuff is going on in the company, a lot of digital initiatives are popping up. Yeah, we are acquiring different companies and stuff, and they all move in online or have some stuff. So now we see our role maybe a little bit differently. Yeah? We want to be that governance, we want to be the establishment, but help the guys, because at the end of the day, it's our goal to deliver an awesome customer experience, yeah, and still go for the one-stop shop. But now we have to think in ways that to say it doesn't have to be everything on the hybrid stack, sorry to say, but we just have to make sure that for the customer, it's seamless and out of one hand, yeah. And that is now our challenge. That changes our role, yeah, to stay hungry and help the organization to take that next step in this digitalization process and keep reinventing. Yeah, so that's our thing. It's a different game, and I mean we've been with the platform. Our baby it has grown up, yeah, and is now settling out to conquer more of the world as it already did. And we also grow older, but we are hiring people. We are growing. And I also can tell you from a personal thing, it's like this, yeah. It's every day a struggle also for me, because then we're on this UX UI meeting, and then or in any decision meeting, I have to be careful not to be that guy and to say, yeah, don't bother, we tried this before, let's not do it, yeah. If my young people are in the team are there, so it is always constantly that I have to pull myself out and say, hey, I don't want to be that guy. I've seen it. I was fighting against it, and that's a challenge. But we're up for it. So that's on a personal level what we're doing, but also we have to find our place and help the organization to deal with this new digital complexity, because we say, hey, we have the experience and we are not as protective and owning as the people before us. At least that's our challenge, and we hope we can live up to it. So that's actually all from my side. I guess we are now opening the deck for questions, in case you have. Yeah, please shoot.
Sure. Somebody a question?
There we go. Just speak directly.
I couldn't help but notice that the time that you went into China's market, expanded there, and also went public, it was the same time that the pandemic happened. My question was how the pandemic actually affected you. How did it contribute to your goals, your plans, and how did it change it because the way that you described it was like everything was going forward, but there was some obstacles definitely in between. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so thanks. You guys were able to tune in? Okay, but okay, then I'll not repeat it, I'll just answer it, right? Or let's say, the question was about when we moved into Asia or China, it was or going public, it was basically also during the time that Corona happened. So the question is what effects were there on the positive or the negative, right? So in that regard, I think we were pushing it into motion way before Corona. So that therefore we were lucky, so that stuff was in place. So for us, I would say we were lucky that things were really in good shape for us, and we could actually, well, it sounds harsh, but benefit from it, yeah, but that's what you do, because we said, hey, now we are lucky that we were pushing the online shop and the self-service and everything. So it was beneficial, but I wouldn't say that we saw a real peak in numbers, because it was anyways really pushed on. But I think it really helped us with our internal guys, that they really then saw how good it is to have this and use it. And I think it definitely also worked with internal adoption of the system and trying it out and really be happy with it. But still we had stuff and pushes in motion that even without Corona. On the internal side, you can also say, together also with the colleagues from Deloitte and with our network within Scheffler, we were already working really cross-functional and global. So we were using Teams and Skype and whatever predecessors and stuff very heavily because we were so distributed, right? I mean, we have distributed even the Deloitte. You have people we had on the team at Düsseldorf, in Poland, in Romania. We had guys from all over the world. So anyways, it was virtual. I was coming, before Corona, we were coming to the office and anyways turning on the computer and dial into somewhere. So when they said, okay, now you do this from home, it was not much of a difference. So I would say Corona didn't really shock us. Yeah.
So one question, you elaborated a bit on how this Agile bubble had interfaces with like established processes in the company, which probably are more waterfall or more traditionally process-based. Can you elaborate a bit more on how you behaved with this without losing speed? Because usually, I'm coming from also from a big company, then you lose a lot of speed when Agile clashes with like the waterfall, and there are dependencies, especially with people that you don't have in your team, but you need to move forward. So how did you do that? Did you pull everyone into your team, or how? Maybe a few words more on that.
Yeah, so there are different answers to that. One answer is we made very clear what kind of stuff we would need from the external systems around us. So we were pretty aware of what we would need to interface to, because it's very common. So it's not a big rocket science if you build a shop, what kind of data you need and what kind of interfaces you need. And luckily, and this was our luck, many of these interfaces already existed because Scheffler had already this online shop which was there. So we could leverage and reuse all of these interfaces. So they have gone through this first integration horror of building up all these interfaces, and we tried not to change them too much. Yeah? So we reused what was there. So this was the lucky part of it. Where we had complete issues was, for example, the PIM system, because there was no PIM system. It was straight from the ERP catalog. And of course, it was not web ready. So we had then to build the PIM system in between. So while we were doing the online shop, we at the same point in time built a PIM system, which is quite complicated because of the catalog structure these guys have, because there are millions and billions of products you could potentially build. Yeah? If you would have built all the variants, and most of these PIM systems are not really able to do that. So we had to do this more or less within the project because nobody else was doing it. The same we applied to pricing because before it was just custom pricing and standard pricing. But you do not want to offer standard pricing because nobody wants to pay that. And you cannot offer custom pricing because it's engineering stuff. So if you have a bearing which has not been built before, nobody has calculated the price before. Yeah? So we also ended up doing the pricing implementation and algorithm as a side project, building a pricing algorithm on the fly, where we then could build not really custom prices, but at least calculated prices. Yeah? So answer to the question is, we leveraged existing interfaces from a technical point of view and from a functional point of view. We built a lot of stuff on our own, which was not part of the project. Yeah? So, but we made it a part because we just needed it. And we tried to align it to our agile cycle, to be honest. Yeah? So we said, okay, here in 2 months, we need this interface from you. And then these guys said to us, okay, then we need a requirement specification in 2 weeks. And then we tried to do the requirement specification in 2 weeks just to please their process. Yeah? And then it was easy for us. If then they had a delay, then we did it a sprint later. So we used our flexibility in the process to compensate for the typical things which you have in waterfall projects.
Maybe one thing to add from a department or people perspective, it's actually what you already suggested. You have to involve a lot of them. It's about finding the ambassador, which kind of understands how we work and have strong protectors on a program level, so that we can work in Agile and be the interface with those by communicating with them, involving them. But not all of them, because you can't catch all of them. Then it's getting too long. That's the secret, basically.
First of all, thanks for the insight. I have two questions with regards to the APEC situation. First of all, was English really the language that you were talking in regards to people in APEC, or did you have any like in-between translators? And was there no issue at all, given that I'm like having a project myself with people from there, and I think communication is key, but very tackling or very challenging. And second of all, did you have any terms of technical consultant overseas, or was it all managed from Europe and it still went fine given the firewall situation abroad?
Yeah, no, good question. Also, it's about communication, huh? And I would say no, we didn't have at any point of time a, let's say, a decoupling point, a local translator or so. We were always speaking English language. There was also, I would say, not really an issue, even not, let's say, in very particular Asian countries. We were always able to communicate, let's say, in both ways. Huh? What is also, let's say, maybe one, I would say, supporting factor for us is that we had a kind of an already existing key user network. So people we could trust, people who would, let's say, doing the regional job, who were connected really very deeply into the regional organization on different levels. I mean, that helps enormously. Huh? You need to have a strong local or regional driver in order to get things done. If you don't have this network, if you don't have those capable people, you will fail, huh? Because you're too far away. And when it comes, for example, to some very particular, I would say, situations like, in our case, it was China, we were saying, okay, we need to adapt from the very beginning very carefully and right to the local requirements, which meant we were flying over, we were conducting local workshops, we were also building up, let's say, and expanding our key user network. Also here we had also a very strong, I must say, especially at the beginning, a very strong support from our top management, what also was influencing, let's say, the regional management and so on. And all of these factors at the end, they were, I would say, the key factors in order to succeed in these countries. And to your second question, no, we didn't have like additional technical somehow consultants in the very countries. It is really something what is steered quite centrally, even though we are a very, let's say, international group of people. And I also want to now just state it out. It's really now a very big team on the Deloitte side as well as on our side. And we are just here the representatives to show it to you. But behind that, there is a team more than 20, 30 people who are running these things. But still, of course, it is a centrally run project, which is regionally and locally adapted and installed with local people, with key users, and let's say with regional responsibilities.
Maybe to add, because you were asking in particular about firewalls, to talk aus dem Nähkästchen, we had that issue as well, questioning ourselves why performance is low and these kind of things. And for that we needed local people who have access to an open network, not a Scheffler network, try things out. In the end it took like 2 to 4 months to really get rid of it, together also with some other supports. You have to consider that when rolling out to that region. And there will be an impact for sure that you can't kind of grab before.
Coming back to the start of the project, was it necessary to like push a project like this, or was it just an innovative thought to be one of the market leaders?
I think for us it was definitely how to say, at a certain point of time, it was definitely necessary. Was it, let's say, especially necessary at this very moment? I cannot really tell you, but as Stefan was also saying, we had really tremendous change in structure, in management during, back in the days, 2016, 17. And that was also for us, let's say, a kind of an amplifier to get these things started. And also, we really need to say, it was a possibility for us to work, let's say, in a kind of an silo mode, in kind of a startup bubble. That is not, let's say, I would say, a given. Because usually you also start, let's say, in a very structural, matured environment. And then you usually do not have the time in order to, let's say, to incorporate in this kind of incubator. But was it really necessary? I think it was exactly the right point of time when we look backward to it, because the competitors, they didn't expect us. They thought, okay, Scheffler, yeah, it's a good company. They really produce good bearings, but they are not that innovative. And we taught them a little bit differently. So, and I must say, now actually the follower became the leader for a specific period of time, and that was for us, it was really a tremendous success. But of course, let's say, latest with the Go Public 2020, we were now having all the other guys behind us, the competitors. They were also eager to catch up, and now it's a much closer race. But I think if we were not able to start, let's say, back in 2017, if we would have just started maybe in 2022 or so, then it would be too late. And then we would still, let's say, be the follower and so on. And let's say, I think it was exactly the right thing to do it at that time. But of course, you need to have luck. You need to have, let's say, you need to have it in your fingertips. And for us, it was like that. Huh?
Sorry, one more question. At one point in time, did you change from a project organization to a Aufbauorganisation? I don't know the English word. And how did that affect your agility in terms of then needing to be incorporated into more of the corporate processes? So,
that's a good question. I think around about 2019. Better? Yeah. So around about 2019. But since we were working the project already in the matrix, you know, it was not a pure organization. So I think this way, it was a nice transition to go into the departmental org structure, but we're still keeping up the work stream, the sub-PO, the PO structure, and I think we managed quite nicely. Yeah? But definitely there are some pitfalls if you move it into an organization, because the project spirit gets lost. Sometimes suddenly it becomes, this is mine, this is yours. Yeah, got to be a little bit more careful. So definitely that has to be managed. Yeah.
Also going back to the beginning of the project, how did you make a decision on your partner? So at a point where I think, so which points did you put into the tender, and on which points did you make a decision? Because when you are at a point that you cannot estimate the whole dimension of such a project, I mean, yeah.
I can try on that one. So the thing is, I think in short, we just dumped our backlog into the tender and said, make a good offer on it. Yeah? No, I mean, that maybe was also part of the challenge, because we came from this requirement specification and our colleagues from the other division did that and said it's just a waste of time. And then we really just went out with our personas, our customer journeys and the backlog, and we say, okay, who's making a good pitch out of it? Who understands it? Who gets it? And that already was a cutoff line, and you made it on the short list here. And then there were several other things. Yeah, I mean, architectural understanding, again, bringing the A-team, and that finally made it.
So from the receiving end, I can tell you it was really, it was really crazy, yeah, to get this final requirement specification, which somebody else has done, which you typically get, and then with this kind of industry.